Welcome to the deep dive. And if you are listening to this right now, I know exactly what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, we know.
Yeah, you're a professional planner. You are deep in the trenches, probably fueled by way too much coffee.
Or not enough.
Right. Definitely not enough coffee. But you're prepping for a rigorous make-or-break professional exam. And you're looking for a really comprehensive breakdown of your core materials.
Which is exactly why we're here.
Exactly. So take a breath, grab your notes, and just get comfortable. Today's mission is meticulously tailored for you. We are going to thoroughly unpack a critical source document that you absolutely need to have locked down for this exam.
It's a big one.
It is. We are examining an excerpted article by Jennifer Fix. And just for context, she holds the professional designations of MCIP and RPP.
Right, so that's a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners and a registered professional planner.
Yeah, and her text perfectly captures this. Well, it's really a fundamental structural shift in modern planning philosophies.
And we really need to emphasize the stakes for your exam prep here because it goes way beyond just, memorizing zoning bylaws or regulatory statutes.
Oh, for sure. They aren't just testing your rote memory.
No, not at all. When you sit down for that test, the examiners are actively evaluating your grasp of the profession's evolution. They want to see that you understand the underlying ethical framework and the mindset shift that defines contemporary practice, not just the mechanical methods of urban design.
Right. It's about the why, not just the how.
Exactly. And the document we're analyzing today establishes a really stark contrast. It places the historical framework of top-down authoritarian city planning directly against the collaborative, participatory approach that you're going to be expected to execute in your own career.
Grasping that friction between the two eras is absolutely essential.
It's the whole ballgame.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are going to mirror the structure of Jennifer Fix's article, starting exactly where she starts, which is by laying down a pretty grim historical baseline.
Yeah, it's a heavy way to start.
It is. The article opens with a sentence that basically sets the entire thematic stage. I'm just going to read the excerpt directly from the text here.
Go for it.
Quote, "The planning profession has come a long way since the days of Robert Moses, the mid-century New York City official who imposed freeway projects on and through established neighborhoods. When asked about the displacement of several thousand residents," end quote.
And it just cuts off there.
Right. The specific excerpt we have cuts off right there.
Yeah.
But the implications of that era are just massive for the profession.
They are massive, and it is really worth analyzing the specific language the author uses here. She deliberately labels Moses a mid-century New York City official.
Which feels very specific, right?
It does, because it grounds the narrative in this very specific bureaucratic mindset of the 20th century. But the critical policy term here, the one you need to circle for your exam, is the verb imposed.
Imposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heavy word.
Yeah, because we aren't just talking about a heavy-handed management style. We are talking about a structural mechanism where infrastructure is literally forced into a landscape without any systemic community consent.
Yeah, the text explicitly notes these freeways were built on and through established neighborhoods. It's highly spatial language. It really highlights a complete disregard for the existing urban fabric.
It's treating the city like a blank slate.
Which it wasn't. But, and I want to push back a bit here, or at least play devil's advocate regarding how we interpret this history for the exam. The mid-century planners genuinely believed they were modernizing cities, right?
Oh, absolutely. They thought they were the heroes.
Right. They were trying to solve these massive congestion and economic issues from this distant bird's-eye view. They were just relying on the technical data they had at the time.
That is a crucial distinction to make. The top-down methodology wasn't born out of some cartoonish villainy. It was born out of extreme technocracy.
Right. The cult of the expert.
Exactly. The prevailing assumption was that the professional, armed with quantitative data and a master plan, held all the necessary answers. The planner was viewed as the supreme authority. But Fix's article forces the modern practitioner to look at the human cost of that unchecked technocracy.
And the excerpt explicitly mentions it. The displacement of several thousand residents.
And that is exactly where the bird's eye view completely fails.
Yeah, because you can draw a highly efficient line on a map in a downtown office, but on the ground, that line obliterates communities.
We aren't talking about minor inconveniences like a detour. We are talking about tearing apart the social and economic fabric of established populations.
Precisely. And you really have to ask yourself why this specific reference is sitting in your study materials right now.
Because Moses serves as the ultimate cautionary tale in modern planning literature. This text is included because you need to be able to articulate what the profession is actively reforming.
Right, moving away from that model.
The mid-century model equated technical efficiency with public good, and it entirely marginalized the lived experience of the residents. Modern planning recognizes that displacement is a failure of the design process. It is not an acceptable collateral damage for infrastructure development.
So if you want to demonstrate your competence to the examiners, you really must show that you recognize this history so you don't replicate its mechanisms.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the real transition point in the document. We move from the historical reality of imposing freeways to a complete paradigm shift.
Right.
And this raises an important question. How does a profession with that kind of history, a history of systemic displacement, pivot to correct such a deeply ingrained methodology?
Well, Fix answers that by introducing a framework that fundamentally redefines the planner's role. It is a massive shift from authoritarian dictation to localized collaboration.
We actually see this shift physically manifested in the article's typography, which I love.
Yeah, the layout is very intentional.
It really is. The document utilizes these massive, prominent headers. One reads, starting with humility, and another is creating meaningful public engagement.
Let's look at humility first.
It's an incredibly interesting word choice for what is essentially a highly technical, data-driven profession.
It is intentional.
Yeah.
And for your professional standards on the exam, humility is the prescribed antidote to the Moses era.
But what does humility actually mean in a policy context?
It means formally acknowledging the limits of your own technical expertise. It's the understanding that quantitative data, your traffic counts, your density ratios, your topography, is entirely incomplete without the qualitative lived experience of the community.
You are no longer the sole source of knowledge.
Exactly.
But let's look at the reality of the job you're studying for. You're going to be a planner with a municipal budget, aggressive development timelines, and political stakeholders demanding results yesterday.
Oh, the pressure is immense.
Right. So how does starting with humility actually function when you have to deliver concrete infrastructure? Doesn't this level of deference just slow everything down and complicate the deliverables?
It absolutely changes the timeline. And that is a tension you need to understand deeply for your exam.
It's a balancing act.
Humility in this context does not mean being passive or abandoning your technical expertise. It means shifting your role from a dictator of outcomes to a synthesizer of inputs.
Synthesizer. I like that.
Yes. The front end of the development process takes significantly longer because you are walking into a community acknowledging that they possess a type of data you do not have. You have to gather that data before you finalize a design.
Which leads directly to Fix's next major heading, acknowledging wisdom in communities. I want to really focus on that specific word. Wisdom.
It's powerful.
It is. The text isn't calling them stakeholders or taxpayers or end users. Framing the community as a vessel of wisdom changes the power dynamic entirely.
It completely shifts the community from being a bureaucratic hurdle in the development process to being a co-author of the plan.
Co-author, exactly.
If a community possesses wisdom, a professional planner is ethically obligated to capture and integrate that wisdom. You cannot design a neighborhood without understanding the historical and social intelligence of the people who actually reside there.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Fix pairs this concept with the phrase, creating meaningful public engagement.
That modifier is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It really is. Let's look closely at the phrasing. She doesn't just settle for public engagement, she adds meaningful. In the context of our exam prep, what separates meaningful engagement from just checking a regulatory box?
Well, superficial engagement often looks like the decide, announce, defend model.
Right, we've all seen that.
You design the freeway project internally, you hold a mandatory town hall after the fact just to check the regulatory box, and then you defend your finalized design against angry residents.
It's adversarial from the start.
Exactly. Meaningful engagement, as framed by this text, means the community's input has the actual power to alter the outcome before the concrete is poured. It is a shared authority over the final deliverable.
The outcome must visibly reflect the wisdom that was acknowledged.
It has to, otherwise it's just lip service.
And to prove this isn't just academic theory, the source document actually provides us with a visual case study of this paradigm in action. We are given a series of photographs and captions featuring Matthew Thompson.
From the firm dialogue.
Yes, from dialogue, facilitating a participatory design process.
This section is critical because it operationalizes the abstract concepts of humility and meaningful engagement. We can actually see it. Let's analyze the specific stakeholders explicitly mentioned in the caption. We have the town of Ladysmith and the Suminous First Nation coming together for this process.
That is a highly complex jurisdictional overlap. You have a municipality and a sovereign First Nation sitting at the exact same table to plan a community area.
And that complexity is exactly why this specific case study is highlighted in the text. Historically, in those top-down eras we talked about, First Nations were frequently excluded from regional planning processes. They often bore the absolute brunt of displacement and unilateral decision-making.
The Moses approach.
Exactly. So by bringing the town of Ladysmith and the Suminous First Nation together for a shared design process, the project is navigating deep cultural, historical, and jurisdictional layers.
It requires a profound level of professional humility.
It really does. To facilitate a consensus between two distinct governing bodies over shared land, it is the absolute opposite of a single official imposing their will.
The photographs illustrating this process are striking. And I want to describe the physical artifacts in these images for you because they represent a massive departure from mid-century methodologies.
It looks nothing like a 1950s drafting room.
Not at all. We aren't looking at a slick corporate boardroom or a distant government office. The planners are in a community setting. Behind the working groups, there is a prominent wooden plaque on the wall reading Ladysmith Secondary School, School District No. 168, Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Which proves they physically left the office and went into the community's territory.
That spatial shift is highly symbolic. You are forcing the public to navigate the intimidating architecture of City Hall. You are meeting them in their own civic spaces, on their own terms.
It lowers the barrier to entry for participation.
And the activity itself is incredibly tactile. We see a group of individuals clustered intimately around tables, actively leaning over a large hand-drawn map of the waterfront.
They're right in the thick of it.
Yeah, citizens are literally holding blue, black, and green markers, drawing directly on the schematic plans. It is a direct physical transfer of design authority from the planner's pen to the community's hands.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this visual entirely defines the modern planning ethos you need to master. Look at the specific verb used in the caption describing Matthew Thompson. It explicitly states he facilitates a participatory design process.
That's the key difference.
Moses imposed. Thompson facilitates.
But let's look at the actual mechanics of facilitation for a second.
Yeah.
When you hand markers to a dozen different community members representing diverse groups like the town and the First Nation, you're going to get conflicting visions.
Oh, guaranteed.
So how does a modern planner synthesize that raw, localized, and sometimes contradictory input into a cohesive, legally binding municipal plan?
That is the modern planner's true technical skill. And that is exactly what you are being tested on. You aren't just drafting efficient maps anymore. You are translating qualitative community desires into quantitative zoning codes and infrastructure plans.
It's a translation job.
To facilitate means to guide the process and provide the tools like the base map and the regulatory framework without dictating the end result. The markers on that paper represent raw, localized data.
Right. The planner's job is to take that data, cross-reference it with environmental regulations, engineering constraints, and multi-jurisdictional agreements, and produce a plan that reflects the community's wisdom while remaining structurally and legally viable. It is a complete inversion of the mid-century model. Instead of the plan dictating the community dictates the plan.
The professional planner is merely the conduit for that vision.
Exactly. The document literally titles this concept Accessing and Including Community Wisdom. The facilitation model is what allows you to ethically access that wisdom. By putting the markers in their hands, you are ensuring that the development is shaped by the people who will actually live with the consequences of it.
Which is the core of modern ethical practice.
Let's synthesize this for your final review as you head back to your study guides. We have explored the stark dichotomy presented in Jennifer Fix's article. You have the historical baseline of the Moses era, defined by top-down authority, the imposition of infrastructure, a reliance purely on a bird's-eye view, and the catastrophic displacement of established neighborhoods.
The cautionary tale.
Right. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the contemporary standard represented by Matthew Thompson and dialogue. This modern approach is defined by starting with professional humility, engaging in meaningful, power-sharing dialogue, and physically placing the design tools into the hands of multi-jurisdictional groups like the town of Ladysmith and the Suinis First Nation.
As you approach your exam, remember that the examiners are actively looking for this nuance. They want to know that you understand the mechanics of multi-jurisdictional collaboration and the ethical imperative of participatory design.
It's not just checking boxes.
Passing this exam is not just about memorizing the technical mechanics of the job. It is about demonstrating that you have adopted this fundamental mindset shift. You must show that meaningful engagement and acknowledging a community wisdom are not optional public relations add-ons.
They are the foundation.
They are the very foundation of ethical modern planning. It is no longer enough to be a master of urban geography. You must be a master of community facilitation.
So what does this all mean? It means your future role isn't to be the smartest, most authoritative person in the room. Your role is to ensure the room is actually being heard and translated into policy. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you hit the books.
Consider the trajectory we have discussed today. If the planning profession has evolved this drastically from the mid-century era of imposing freeways and causing systemic displacement to today's standard of humble participatory design with sovereign groups like the Suinis First Nation, how might the very definition of community wisdom challenge and reshape the role of the professional planner in the decades to come?
It's a great question to keep in mind. Good luck on your exam.